Recently, while playing Morrowind, one thought hit me. Morrowind feels way more dangerous than Skyrim, even though it has no dragons. Have you ever wondered why that is? Morrowind makes you feel unsafe for a lot of reasons that you just don't get in later Elder Scrolls games. That feeling starts immediately as you arrive on a boat. The world looks strange, a bit alien. Yes, the landscape is definitely not comforting. It doesn't look anything like our world, unlike Skyrim or Oblivion. Instead of regular forests, rocky hills, and grassy terrain, we have ash areas where you mostly find ash and withered trees. Those lands don't look welcoming at all. The ground looks sick, and just look at these stems with thorns you can find here. You definitely wouldn't want to accidentally wound yourself on them. Not to mention the ash storms that can start at any moment while you are traveling through those areas. You can barely see 2 steps ahead. You are stuck in the middle of nowhere with no real shelter in sight unless you want to hide inside the shell of a silt strider, which is a pretty common view here. And that is another thing that makes the atmosphere in the Ashlands even heavier. Sometimes it almost looks like a silt strider cemetery. Okay, ash terrain is one thing, but what about the Molagamo region covered with hard rocks and lava pools? It feels hostile by design. It's definitely not a place where you'd go with a blanket and have a picnic. Even the swamps we can find around Seydanin feel more ominous than the ones near Marthal in Skyrim. And in Skyrim the marshes are gloomy, sure, but they can also look magical depending on the lighting. But the ones in Morrowind have nothing magical about them. They look cold and harsh thanks to the colors that were used here. The weather here is mostly cloudy and the sky is rarely clear. You can also expect rain, thunder or fog, which makes the mood feel even gloomier, sometimes almost depressing. And when you don't look at the regions separately but at the bigger picture, Vvardenfell is an island with a huge volcano at the center. Red Mountain is always pretty close to you, reminding you that everything you see, including you, exists under an active threat. That alone makes the world feel unstable. At any moment you feel like it could all go wrong. And then you have the blight storms. These storms are tied to disease, corruption and creatures that have been twisted by their influence. Technically you cannot get infected just by standing in a blight storm, but you can catch one of the 4 blight diseases from creatures that were infected by it. And those creatures are stronger and more aggressive, making the areas where they appear even more dangerous. And actually the fauna in Morrowind itself feels way more dangerous than the fauna in Skyrim or Oblivion, even without blight disease. Think about it. In Skyrim you see deer, wolves, foxes and rabbits. It feels like an ecosystem you understand and you know exactly how those animals will behave without even observing them. In Morrowind the ecosystem feels completely foreign. You don't find deer grazing peacefully in forests or on a grassy terrain. Instead you see guars and nixhounds. There are no regular wolves or bears roaming around. Instead you run into alits and kagutis. And instead of classic birds we get flying jellyfish and the cutest cliff racers that will probably be your best companions during every single journey. There's nothing better than hearing their distant screech getting closer and closer while you cannot even see what's attacking you yet. So the wild animals are completely different from our world. On one hand, it feels exciting to see something new. On the other hand, you have no idea what to expect. Someone who just arrived on Vvardenfell might not know which animals are aggressive and which ones you can safely admire from a distance. I remember seeing a bullnetch for the first time and being sure it would attack me, but it's actually not hostile despite its size and alien look. And the first script that appeared while I was waiting to heal, even though it's also not hostile, I assumed it would attack me, so I got rid of it instantly, because Morrowind teaches you very quickly that animals can attack in pretty unexpected ways, and you'd better get rid of everything that moves and isn't a humanoid NPC. Look at this creature for example. Would we expect that this massive bug, which looks like a huge beetle, can attack with a magical fire attack? And how about guars? Ashlanders use them for travel, so you might expect that when you see one, it won't attack you. Wrong. Unless you are lucky enough to stumble across a white guar connected to a really cool quest, or one that belongs to someone, which you can usually tell by the boxes on its back, you can pretty much assume it will charge at you. So animals definitely make Morrowind feel scarier, especially at the beginning. You simply don't know what to expect. Even slaughterfish are more aggressive than the ones in Skyrim. At the start of the game, I wouldn't even recommend going into the water. The moment your feet touch it, they sense you. You might not even notice it yet, and in the blink of an eye, you are bitten. 2 or 3 more bites, and that's it. So yes, almost all animals, maybe except rats, are very different from the ones in our world. And it's not just the fact that they are unknown that makes them feel dangerous, it's also their design. Compare them to cute deer grazing on tundra terrain, birds flying above solitude, or rabbits running away the moment they see you. Even wolves and bears, which can of course be dangerous, still look kind of cute. At least to me. In Morrowind, not only only animals but also creatures like daedroves, hungers or ogres are designed in a much scarier way. Just look at them. They definitely don't feel like something you'd ever want to meet in real life. They look diseased, unnatural and twisted, which makes your brain stay alert. And don't even get me started on the ash creatures, especially the ascendant sleepers. Those are on a completely different level of scary. But you know who is also scary? Not just the animals or creatures, but the people living throughout Morrowind, the Dunmer. They give off a completely different vibe compared to the NPCs you find in Skyrim or Oblivion. They can be pretty brutal in many aspects. Just think about how Argonians and Khajiit are treated in Morrowind. Many of them are locked in braces, whether sold in slave markets or kept in caves, completely isolated and probably forced into hard work. Slavery is just a normal part of society here. Nobody around seems shocked by it. It's just part of daily life. And what about silt striders? Dunmer literally carve a hole in the shell and put hooks into the flesh so they can control and ride them. That alone says a lot about how harsh this world is. And how about you? How do people treat you, especially at the very start? You are an outlander. Many NPCs are suspicious, dismissive, or openly rude. You feel like you don't belong here, and that adds to the tension. Even their requests and behavior feel different. If you are doing quests for the Mages Guild, you might expect mostly harmless tasks, at least I did. But very quickly you get a quest to put a fake soul gem inside Galbadir's chest. Later, Rannis asks you to collect debts, and if the sorceress refuses to pay, you can just get rid of her. Same with recruiting some Telvanni wizard. If he won't agree, just get rid of him. You cannot question those methods, and you'll probably never hear a moral lecture about the things you've done. It makes the whole world feel colder and more ruthless. And then you have House Telvanni, which is even worse in that aspect. For them, violence seems to be a casual part of the day. They are obsessed with having slaves and didn't sign the Ebonheart Pact because they didn't want to give them up. So the NPCs have more character, but they are often neither nice nor honorable. They are harsh, just like the landscape they live in. And how about the buildings they inhabit and work in? We have three main architectural styles belonging to three different houses: Hlalu, Redoran and Telvanni. Each one is very unique. They don't look like typical European medieval cities with simple wooden or stone houses like we see in Skyrim or Oblivion. Those games often remind me of real-world medieval towns or wooden farm buildings you can still find in small villages, sometimes abandoned or collapsing. House Hlalu buildings are quite simple and rough. They are probably the most similar to real-life architecture. They remind me a bit of buildings you can find in Greece. Simple shapes, white or ecru walls and flat roofs. But House Redoran is completely different. Their buildings are inspired by giant insects they hunted in the past. I wouldn't even be surprised if some of them are actual shells. Just look at the Manor District in Aldrun. It's made from the huge shell of an emperor crab. Living inside the shell of a giant creature they defeated feels like a constant reminder of their strength. Their architecture basically tells you they are warriors and powerful fighters. If they can defeat giant insects like that, you probably don't want to make Redoran your enemy. And the same can be said about House Telvanni. It's probably better to avoid them altogether. They are completely unpredictable and you cannot really trust them. You never know if someone just wants your magical robe and will send an assassin after you for it. Yes, you can actually get such a quest from Nelof, so what could later stop him from sending someone else to get rid of you and take some of your stuff too? Their mushroom towers rise high above everything else, almost like each wizard wants to stand above the rest of the world. Inside, the twisting corridors and narrow passages make you feel small and lost. It's not a comfortable place. It feels powerful and dangerous. Besides, there's also the Sixth House cult, which gives off a pretty scary vibe. While exploring caves and other locations, you can actually stumble upon places that belong to the cult. Inside, you'll find weird and creepy spaces with red candles, huge bells, and altars. So it's not just the creatures or the landscape that feel threatening. Even the society itself feels harsh, unpredictable, and sometimes morally disturbing. That makes Morrowind feel dangerous on a completely different level. And I'm not saying that every NPC in Skyrim is honorable, of course not. But I feel like people in Morrowind are more often trickier, harsher, and without a moral compass. Okay, but there are other things that make Morrowind feel scarier. One of them is the lack of quest markers. You get a quest, but instead of receiving a simple marker that guides you exactly where to go, you get directions. And you actually have to follow them. Of course, sometimes certain locations are added to your map, so in those cases, it's a bit easier. But you don't have an arrow or pointer showing you the exact direction for a selected quest that you can just follow without thinking. There is no distance indicator, which you actually also don't have in Skyrim, but you do in, for example, The Witcher 3. Most of the time, you just get instructions like travel north past the fork, turn east at the large rock, continue until you see a withered tree, then head south toward the hills. And you help yourself by checking the map or using the little mini-map in the bottom right corner, which also serves as a small compass showing direction. But it works like a regular compass and you won't see anything related to any quest. And I honestly love that. It's super immersive. Walking through Vardenfell with no marker makes every step feel uncertain. You check the horizon, compare landmarks, and might not even notice the monsters that a bit later suddenly attack you from behind. So it makes the journey scarier, but it also makes you remember the map better because you have to pay attention. You actually look at your surroundings instead of just following an arrow. Thanks to that, you might spot some interesting creatures in the distance or caves where you'll find real treasure, which makes traveling super exciting. But of course, that curiosity might also get you into serious trouble. Besides, no quest markers make the world feel more dangerous because you can get lost. You start wondering, did I do something wrong? Did I miss the rock? Or do I just need to keep going a bit longer? Every choice feels weighty. Do you retrace your steps, risking more encounters and losing more time? Or do you push forward and hope you did everything right? That uncertainty constantly builds tension. It's not just a simple click. If you are, for example, deep in the Bitter Coast and low on resources, you must survive the journey and somehow make it back. It feels risky. Of course, this mainly happens at the beginning or if you are a new player who doesn't know how MCV intervention, divine intervention, and mark and recall work. Besides that, there is a travel system that helps you move between places. But it's not as simple as clicking on a location on the map. You have to use Silt Riders, Mage's Guild teleportation, boats, or propellant chambers. And you have to figure out how each method works and where it actually allows you to travel. For example, figuring out how propellant chambers work took me a while, especially since the indices are not easy to find. Even mark and recall. Before I actually started using it, I literally lost a few awesome pieces of loot just because I couldn't carry anymore, while I could have just set a mark at my base and gone back while over-encumbered. Morrowind definitely doesn't hold your hand. It doesn't protect you from poor decisions. You have to think about how to handle things in this game. But that is actually super cool. It feels like the game respects you as a player. It trusts that you can figure things out. You can try different methods, experiment, and even attempt ideas that sound a bit stupid at first, and sometimes those ideas turned out to be the best solutions. Before I dive in any further, I just want to invite you to join my Discord server. We talk about Morrowind and other classic games. We also share things like memes, our hobbies, music we enjoy, or just daily life. You can find the link in the channel and video descriptions. What also makes Morrowind feel more dangerous is that there is no level scaling. Even early in the game, you can find enemies wearing Daedric armor, which can be pretty scary. After playing Skyrim, you might expect enemies to be adjusted to your level, but that is definitely not the case. You see an enemy wearing Daedric armor and instantly feel respect for your opponent while wondering if you can survive a single hit. It's not like seeing a regular bandit who happens to wear Daedric armor just because you have reached a high enough level. I must say that doesn't feel dangerous and it breaks immersion. In Morrowind, you stumble across places you remember for later because you went inside and simply couldn't survive the enemies there. So you either go back after leveling up a bit or get clever and tricky. For example, pretty early in the game, I defeated an enemy equipped with ebony armor and a Daedric war axe just by using spells from a distance. The enemy couldn't reach me, so I could cast for as long as I wanted. But if he had gotten close, I probably wouldn't have survived even one hit. And then there's the dice roll system. That also makes the game scarier. You cannot be sure your hit or spell will land, especially if your fatigue is low. On top of that, your health and magicka don't automatically restore while fighting or even walking. You have to use potions or rest in a safe place, so outdoors with no enemies around or inside buildings only if you paid for a bed like an inn's or belong to a faction like the Mage's Guild and use their beds. Of course, you can also restore your health with magic. The lack of automatic health and magicka regeneration is one thing, but moving slowly can also make your journeys feel much scarier. Your running speed is very slow at the beginning, especially if you didn't focus on it while creating your character. It feels like you barely move, so when something attacks you, it feels almost impossible to run away. That made the beginning of the game much harder and way more exciting for me. When you combine the dice roll system with no automatic health or magica regeneration plus slow movement, your experience might look something like this, at least mine did many times. You swing your weapon or cast a spell and miss. You stare at the enemy, panicking, hoping your next hit lands. Your magica or fatigue is just too low. Every second counts. You try to act fast and decide to run away, but you are so slow that it barely makes a difference. You try anyway, but then you just bump into the walls, panicking and forgetting where the hole is that can actually let you leave the tomb. That uncertainty makes fights feel tense and dangerous in a way Skyrim rarely does. In Skyrim, you swing or cast a spell and you just hit. You have full control. In Morrowind, you don't, at least before you level up a lot. I remember how at the very start I was not using magica potions because I didn't know how to make them and I didn't have the right gear. I had to defeat each creature with a full magica bar, and after the battle I had to wait for it to restore. With the dice roll system, I often ended up with an enemy that should have been taken down by my last spell, but unfortunately the last cast failed and drained the rest of my magica. Or sometimes after a successful fight, I waited for my health to restore, and during that time a Quama forager or something even bigger attacked me. Then I had a problem, my magica didn't reset and I couldn't defeat it with my physical attacks because I kept missing. I was training only magic skills, so any weapon in my hands was basically useless. But all those mechanics make the game more exciting, scary and memorable. You remember when cliff racers terrified you. You remember getting lost. You remember failing spells. But after many hours you become very powerful. You start handling any quest or exploring any dungeon without issues. And you know what? Your strength feels earned in a deeply satisfying way because you achieved it all alone with no guides from the game and no arrows showing you exactly where to go or what items to take. And that's the real difference between Morrowind and Skyrim. One makes you feel like a hero almost from the start as you quickly discover you are Dragonborn and can use shouts. The other makes you feel like a complete stranger surviving in a place that at first glance doesn't need you.